Hello, folks. How's everybody doing? I hope you're doing fine. Today, I was going to talk about another dissonant, but I guess I got to continue with the Hilsters, and that's because of some of the comments that were made. I want to clarify several issues that were raised, and not only because of the Hilsters, but because a lot of people share or have the same misconceptions that David D. Hilster has, especially, right? About physics and about what science is about, at least from my point of view. And so I want people to get a feel for how I see physics, how I see science, and what the differences are. Okay. So here goes. Dave made some comments the other day, and I'll go with the first one here. And that's Dave D. Hilster there. He uh, is head of or one of the important persons of a group known as the John Chappell uh, Natural Philosophy Society. Okay, he makes this comment after I made, I think it's 3 videos now, criticizing his theory, his theory and his father's theory. They both work on this theory. They're working on a book. Okay, and I was criticizing their theory, and we were talking about the ether. And last time I talked about the definition of the ether. What is the ether? Okay, that's what we're trying to figure out here. Okay, and he says definition of ether is Bill's definition of ether is different from everyone else's. Bill does not know the difference between ether and particle models. And my definition in red there, ether, bunch of particles. Very simple. Okay, straightforward. Dave's definition, we're still waiting. And, he has no obligation to even come over and make comments. Okay, so if he does show up, fine, that's his prerogative. He can come in to put his comments. But you would think that if a person comes in to put his comments, say, "Look, Bill, you're wrong. It's not a bunch of particles. It's la 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 la." It would take what, one more sentence, 2 more sentences, whatever, and he would clarify from his point of view what is wrong with my definition of ether and why it's different from everyone else's. Today I'm going to reinforce really because I already argued that last week or last time. Today I'm going to reinforce that everyone thinks exactly like me. And maybe Dave is the guy who's the odd man out, okay? About what the definition of the ether is. Bunch of particles, okay? That's what I'm going to insist on. Anyways, I don't have a definition of ether from Dave. And you can see I underlined a few words there. At the top, he talks about models. Then he says we have words and concepts that are used and mostly agreed upon, like ether. Okay? So what are the problems? Well, the first problem is Dave wants to skip the definition. As you can see, he did not put a definition. And he wants to go directly into talking about models and theories. That's a no-no. First, we need to know what the word ether means before we can use it in a sentence in physics or in science. We got to define this word because this is a crucial word. He's criticizing that my definition of the ether is unique. And I'm saying, no, I'm defining ether as everybody else does. In fact, as I'm going to show in a second, including David D. Hilster. Okay, so David D. Hilster also thinks of the ether as a bunch of particles. That's what I'm going to show today. Okay, so I want him to take his words back. Okay, anyways, he wants to skip the definition. He wants to go directly into models, theories. He wants to talk about what the ether does. We don't care what the ether does. We're going to take a snapshot of the ether and analyze what we have in front of us objectively. Okay, that's what the ether is going to be. Okay, this is going to be an objective definition, not a personal opinion. It's going to be objective. Okay, not subjective. Okay, the other one is he says mostly. That means not everybody seems to be on the same boat as far as the word ether is concerned. That was an interesting word he put in there. But the word that's most offensive is the word agreed. In science, we don't agree to anything. In science, we are all murderers, assassins, killers. We are soldiers. We fight for our definitions. And if someone has a different definition than someone else, we put them both in the ring. They have to duke it out. Okay? It's none of, well, let's reach an agreement. Let's agree. Look, since we can't agree, why don't I take two words from your definition? You take two of mine. We'll do some horse trading. Maybe we can reach some kind of consensus. That's how the way science works. The way it works, you come in with a baseball bat and you beat the other guy to a pulp. That's the way it works in science. Only one definition can stay, and that's the one that is the rational one. Okay? And I'll get to what a rational definition is. You have good and bad, true, false, correct, incorrect. Those are opinions. What is rational versus irrational? That's got objective criteria. Okay? So, and we better have, because we define science as rational explanation. So we better have a good definition, not a good one, a rational definition for the word rational. Okay? Anyways, as you can see, he skips the definition. He goes to models. He wants to talk about theories, what the ether does. And then he says, yeah, I'm confusing ether with particle models. Okay. And again, we don't agree on definitions. We leave the one that is the rational one. That's the one that stays. The other one goes away. Okay. And a person can take his irrational definition to his church, to his Sunday school. That's the way it works in science. Okay, so here we have, you go out there and you say, well, hold it, who has the mostest of the right definitions of ether? And I went into Quora, okay, and this is what you find from people who answer these questions. You have people who answer the question, what is ether? And there's another question, what is the ether theory? Okay. And I just want to point to the fact that they all describe the ether or define the ether as a medium or a substance. Okay, everyone. One on the bottom also said, well, it's a thin fluid. Okay, they all said it's a medium or a substance. Now that was interesting because that means that if Dave wants to define according his definition of the ether according to the mostest, he would have to use the word medium or substance, which is essentially what I'm doing here, because I'm saying bunch of particles. And if you're talking about a medium, such as the ether, that fills space, you can see they use the word fill just about everywhere, or half of them at least did. You'll see the word filling, filled, etc. Okay, everybody talks about filling space with ether. Okay, now when you fill your gas tank, do you fill it with an entity, a liquid or whatever that's made of a single piece? No. When you fill something, you're filling it with things that a body that is comprised of parts. Okay, so this ether that fills space is not made of a single piece. I'm sure that even Dave would not argue that. He would have to concede that this so-called ether is made of parts, of segments, of pieces, of particles. Okay, so no, the ether is a medium made of particles. What did I define? Bunch of particles. Anyone who strays from that definition is not talking about the ether, because that's what the ether has always meant. Okay, another example, because remember, we're in a court of law here, okay? And here you have the, you got to fight for your definitions in front of the judge, because he's accusing me of being a liar or of ignorance, saying, oh, he doesn't know how to define ether because everyone defines it differently. And I'm saying, look, I'm defining it just like everyone else, as I just showed. And here you have the fractal woman who I discussed a couple weeks ago, and she certainly doesn't have a good opinion of me. But what did she say? She said, ether, a sea of electron-positron pairs, a medium particle antiparticle pairs. The vacuum of space is not empty, it is just empty of matter, but full of ether. What? Of particle antiparticle pairs. What is she talking about? Particles. Particles, particles, particles. The medium is dipolar particles. There she says it again. The only thing solid about the ether medium is the individual particles that make it up. Okay, so what is she talking about? Particles. And there I drew a picture of her version of the ether, because she says that her ether is finite. She clarified that. Okay. Wikipedia was it say it's a material that fills the region of the universe above the terrestrial sphere. In the late 19th century, physicists postulated that the ether permeated all throughout space, providing a medium through which light could travel in a vacuum. So, uh, what was um, what was the ether? Bunch of particles. That's what it is. Okay. So again, I'm not sure what definition Dave has. He hasn't put it in there, but he would have to say first, it's a medium or substance. It's made of particles. It's not made of a single piece. It's made of segments, parts, pieces. So I'm not sure what he's complaining about. My definition is right on the money. Okay. And again, if he wants to talk about theories, he can get to that later. Right now, we want to know what the ether is, what the word ether stands for. Okay. Um, to make matters worse for him, he's head of the John Chapel Society, as I call it, because they do religion. They have a little chapel there, and they predicate the word. And this is what the founder of this John Chapel Society uh, said about the ether. He was an etherist. And he says, ether is simply a medium. What is it made of? It consists of photons, particles. That's what he said. And there you have it on the left-hand side, a picture that I drew there, of his particle world. I drew it as finite. I'm assuming his is finite. Maybe it was infinite. I don't know. But it's straightforward. What I'm saying is it's just a bunch of particles. And Mr. John Chappell or Chapel agrees with me. And this is the organization that Dave runs. So I don't know. You figure it out for yourself. I gave more testimony the other day. Here's Mr. George Stokes, who was the head of the Royal Society for most of the 19th century. What was the ether? He was an ether supporter or believer, okay? And he says, the ether in space. What is it? Particles of the ether, okay? Ether moves while light is propagated through it. So what did George Stokes think about the ether? Well, he thought it was a bunch of particles. That's what it was. Did Einstein, who came later, disagree with him? No, it says exactly the same thing. Einstein's talking about gravitational ether versus James Maxwell's electromagnetic ether, okay, or specifically the ether of light that underlaid light. And what does Einstein say? Space is endowed with physical qualities. There exists an ether. This ether consists of parts. Did I miss anything? I mean, you figure out for yourself if in any way I'm misrepresenting any of this. Okay. Let me get back here. And does it stop there? No. In fact, Mr. Dave D. Hilster also believes that the ether is what? What did I say there? A bunch of particles. Well, here's Mr. D. Hilster's version of the ether. Okay. No, wrong one. Sorry. Got ahead of myself there. Here it is. Was it this one? Oh no. Okay, I got the wrong one. Too bad. Okay. Happens. Dave put a comment, I'll just state it, in which he says that the ether, as far as he is concerned, it's just a bunch of particles. Let's see if I can get it, because it's a good thing to look at. Give me a second here and I'll get it up here. It's worth looking at Dave's definition, unless I erased it by mistake here. Oh yeah, I erased it by mistake. Okay, that's what it was. Okay, that's unfortunate. Because he did say in a comment that, I'll put that up maybe as an introduction next week. But they did in fact say that the ether is a bunch of particles. His theory is based light, the vibration of light or the movement of light, he says is a bunch of particles. And that's an ether theory, essentially. But I'll put the exact comment next week as an introduction. I don't think I'll continue with the family. Um, okay, the only guy that, as far as I know, that has a different version of the ether is Mr. Wheeler. Okay, and Ken Wheeler, he's the theory hypothesis, and I call him the tattooed Buddhist. And he's got a different definition because he does it with concepts. Okay, and this is his definition here. Okay, and what is it? He says, especially on the right hand side at the bottom, you see his idea of the ether is that it's immaterial. It's fields, which for sure are immaterial, especially according to him. And the ether, he says, is this immaterial ether, is the correct version. Okay, and you can see he defines it in terms of concepts such as counter space. And he also uses the term dielectricity and dielectric and so on. So he's the only one who defines the ether on the basis of concepts. Now, if that's what Dave de Hilster was referring to, that that the ether that he's thinking about is one, made of concepts, abstract concepts. Well, yeah, then maybe he has a different definition, but that's not the standard definition out there. I've got the standard definition everybody uses, which is bunch of particles, and we still haven't gotten to what the ether does. Okay, so then he accuses me of something else. He says, look, he says that these videos don't hold value given they show almost no understanding of our model. I don't understand his model, he says. And in fact, I think in one of the comments he said that I missed 90% of it. Jesus, that much? I thought I would write on the money, and it turns out I missed 90% of it. So I need to really find out what I miss here, I don't use these videos. I don't see these videos having any value other than showing someone who is criticizing something that he does not understand. Okay, that's the accusation. Let's rig in evidence and proof to prove in a court of law, because this is what this issue is about. He's saying that I'm ignorant of his theory of what he's proposing. So what is he proposing? Okay, here are the two the Hilsters, father and son. Okay, and I'm just going to read. This is all from their site. Okay, I didn't invent any of this. Okay, this is just taken from their site because I want to portray their theory as accurately as possible. I don't want to. I'm not here to disinform. I'm not here to disorient. I'm trying to put the theory as they wrote about it. I'm just trying to illustrate their theory. That's what I'm doing here. He says the particle model is a physical model of the universe. That is, all areas of physics can be explained using physical interactions of particles. Gravity, light, etc., even chemistry can all be explained using particles. Did I miss something? I mean, they're talking about a bunch of particles, and that's the de Hilster ether right there, illustrated on your upper right. Just a bunch of particles. And they labeled these, I mean, they come up with these names. They said G1, we have the G2, we have the nucleon, which they labeled as the N1. They also said they have an N2. So we have all those particles. Those are the ones that I illustrated. Now, maybe they're cubic. Maybe they look like pyramids. I don't know. But I put them as spheres because I don't know what, they didn't specify what shape these particles have. Okay. Now then, David added a comment. He added a comment in one of his comments. He said it's based on particles which don't exist. Their model, right? And that worried me a little bit because I don't know if he was being facetious, if he was joking. Okay, but assuming it's true, we have a problem because first, it doesn't belong in physics. Second, it contradicts the definition that Bob D. Hilster put in his book, which is, what does real mean? Objects that move. That's how he defined it. And so these folks are going to be talking about particles. They're saying that these particles are going to move. The G1 is going to move. The G2 is going to move. And so by definition, those are particles that exist. But now he contradicts that by saying that it's based on particles that don't exist. So now you figure out, okay? Just in case, I put their model of the atom up over in the middle, okay? And it's the planetary atom because they're still defining the N1 as the nucleus, okay, the nucleon. The G1, I don't know if you can see it there. I put a little line there to show where it's at, a little purple dot there. That's supposed to be the electron bead. If you read on the lower right-hand side, it says G1 replaces electron, photon, and graviton. Okay, so they're going to use the G1 as an electron. There's your electron, and then the G2 are the forces, the binding forces as they call them. I mean, if you talk about binding, you're talking about pull. Otherwise, they would have put something like they're the pressure forces, or the atomic pressure force, or the molecular pressure force. Because if they're going to say that the G2 pushes the G1 electron inwards towards the nucleon, then they have to use the word pressure and not binding. Okay, so I'm not sure if how they're going to put that in their book. But right now, that's very misleading if they're talking about binding and they're saying that the G2 particles from the outside keep the atom together. I don't know if that's the case. I'm just speculating here because I don't really know how they're going to word that in their book. Anyways, have I lied? Have I misinterpreted? Have I misrepresented their particle model in any way? Well, let's find out. Here's gravity, okay? This is according to them. I haven't invented any of this. This is their gravitational model. They say, look, the Earth and the Moon are being pushed towards each other by the G1 particles. Those are the red arrows there, okay? They represent the G1 particles pushing the Earth and the Moon. You consider those, you can look at those as the Earth and the Moon, right? The two balls at the bottom. And passing through both objects. When they hit, the G1 scatters and the object is pushed. Okay, so they're talking about push gravity, okay, from the outside inwards. The loss of G1s through the Earth causes a reduction of the G1s toward the Moon. Okay, so the blues there, the blue arrows, they represent the fewer particles in that region pushing the two objects apart, and the red ones, which are much more numerous because they come from every star in the universe, they push the objects together. It's a push gravity scenario. Okay, that's what they're describing, and that's what I illustrated. The loss of G1s through the Earth causes a reduction of G1s towards the Moon. Hence, there are more G1s pushing the Moon towards the Earth than there are G1s pushing the Moon away from the Earth. That's what I illustrated. Okay, and then they say that the same thing happens in reverse between the Earth pushing the Moon away. Anyways, the issue here, one of the criticisms that I had is that if you look at the upper right, you have fewer particles coming into an object, any object in the universe, than there are coming out of it. That's how they explain gravity. Okay, so there are more particles coming into every object. If you are a human being listening, and we find your center of gravity, let's say it's your belly button. Okay, let's assume that's your center of gravity. The Hilster says that gravity within your body is all these particles in the universe, the G1s specifically, coming through your body and pushing every part of your body towards that center. That's what they're saying. And you're throwing out fewer and fewer particles than what you're receiving. Well, then you should be bloating. You should be getting fatter every day. Maybe that explains why people get fat. I don't know. If every object in the universe is receiving more than it gives out, then where are all these particles coming from? Are we depleting the ether? Again, I don't know how they're going to explain that. I'm just showing what fatal flaws I find in their system, and I don't think I'm misrepresenting anything. Okay, here I'm just illustrating what they said, what they wrote about, what they talked about in their videos. Okay, if I misinterpret something, fine. I'll ask for forgiveness. Okay, here is the magnet. Okay. This is their explanation of how a magnet works. Okay, and so they say, look, on the upper right here, you see the G1 particles, and the blue G1s are the ones that are going to do gravity. So they go to the center of the magnet, because remember, every object has a center of gravity. In this case, the magnet has a center of gravity, and where do you think that is? Well, that's in the center of that magnet. Okay, so those are the G1 blues. The blue G1 particles coming on the upper right-hand side of this picture, okay? And the G1s also go around, okay? Keep that in mind. That's going to be the magnetic field, Okay, they're going to use the G1s as the magnetic field that goes around the magnet, and also they have the G1 superimposed upon them, coming from every star in the universe, pushing, everything towards the center of gravity of that magnet. Okay, but then on the bottom, they say they're going to be doing the magnetic field. They're going to contour the magnetic field. They're going to shape it with G2 particles that are also apparently coming from every star in the universe. I don't know, but that's how they're going to do their G2s. See, if you look at the upper left-hand side where we have the picture put out by Bob D. Hilster, he has the F2 in red, and that's the force of the G2 particles, and those are pushing the magnetic field from every corner. Okay, so that's what shapes the magnetic field according to Bob D. Hilster. And that's what I illustrated. I don't know in what way I could have misrepresented that when I'm essentially I'm illustrating what Bob D. Hilster illustrated and described. And he says when the DC current flows through a copper wire, a magnetic field is generated. The particle model suggests that the G1 particles, electrons, escape from the copper wire and are trapped by G2 gravity. So that's what he illustrated, and that's what I illustrated. This suggests then that G1 particles not only replaces the electron, but it also is the particle that forms the magnetic field. Okay? So I don't know. I think I illustrated quite well. The G1 forms the magnetic field. The G2 is the one that shapes it and that gives it, that contours it. And what way did I misrepresent, what they're saying? And then we come to how he actually produces magnetic attraction, how two magnets attract each other, and that's what they essentially illustrate or discuss. I illustrated this for them. I took Bob de Hilster's magnet and field and cleaned it up a little bit, and there you can see the mechanism that he describes. He's saying, the G2 particles push two magnets from the outside. That's what they're saying. So I don't know in what way I could have misrepresented what Bob and Dave are describing here. So yeah, I don't know. I've got a problem with them making these cheap shots because they let me put this back up there. I think that I'm being falsely accused. I don't know in what way I could have misrepresented what they're saying. I'm illustrating what they're saying directly. And maybe it's up to, since they won't do it, maybe one of you smart fellows out there, can tell me what I missed, what I misrepresented here, okay? And what else do I want to show? Okay, here's another argument by Dave. He made this comment, okay? And so all these comments need to be addressed. He says, your argument that you are an exclusive oracle to Mother Nature. Not true. I'm not saying I'm the oracle of Mother Nature. I'm saying I define terms objectively. And whoever's religion is threatened by my definitions, well, he has a problem. He's got to go see the psychiatrist, not me. Okay? I define objectively. And if someone has a problem with my objective definitions, well, put up your gloves. Let's get into the ring. I'll go in there with a baseball bat and beat you up because I study very well my definitions. And again, if you look at them, they're all objective. There's no subjectivity in them at all. I removed all subjectivity. Experiments, observation, all that's been taken out. It's all straightforward definitions, which are objective, which can be used consistently, rationally, scientifically, okay? So no, this is not that I'm the oracle of Mother Nature's, that I define things objectively. And that hurts a lot of people, especially people who hold religions, okay? Okay, and he says, Bill has logic that does not pass the most basic tenets of consistency. My God. Bill does not show self-consistency with his logic, a self-contradicting person. Big, mighty words, especially when you don't support your arguments. I mean, you would think that he would at least put a couple examples, and he doesn't do that. He's a naysayer. He's not even a critic because a naysayer just saying nay, 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 nay. He's not a yay sayer. He's just a naysayer, and he doesn't say what yay is. You know, if this is not what is now if this is ain't what is, and we're always missing that is we're missing his side of the argument. Now, of course, he doesn't have to put a lot of stuff in there and get in there. In detail or anything like that. But things like the ether, where he would have just put a definition, his definition would have been very straightforward, one liner, two liners, that would have done it. You know, talking about theories is something else. Now you got to put paragraphs. You may not want to do that. Fine, no problem. But again, definition, I don't see any excuse for that. Okay, let's find out what if I'm inconsistent or whether the Hilsters are inconsistent. Okay, let's find out who is inconsistent here. Okay, and here we have a boxing match. Baseball bat against baseball bat or glove against glove. And what does Bob D. Hilster say in his book? He says that object that which we detect with our senses. Well, that's a problem because we need another object. We need to run an experiment to find out what the definition of the word object is. Compare that against my definition of object, which is that word something, the first word up there. Something that which has shape. And synonyms, perfect synonyms, object, thing, anything, body, structure, entity, medium, any of those qualify. In physics, there's only shape and that which doesn't have shape. That's nothing. Okay? And what is motion? According to Bob D. Hilster, the change of an object's position. Well, change is already a motion, and time involves motion. Okay, so he's already got synonyms, and we don't use synonyms or antonyms to define words. Okay, motion down at the bottom, lower right, two or more locations of an object. That's what motion is. Very straightforward, very, very objective. There's nothing subjective. It doesn't say I saw, I tested, I ran an experiment. None of that. It's two or more locations of an object. Straightforward, objective definition. So I'm not sure how I'm being inconsistent. And again, cheap shot, Then we get to the key word, which is exist or real. What is real, right? And Bob D. Hilster defines it objects that move, okay? And then, you have Dave saying that his system or his theory is based on objects that don't exist. And again, I hope he was just being facetious there, right? Which is, again, it contradicts not only what they said at the beginning. It contradicts Bob D. Hilster's definition of existing or real as being, objects that move. So if their G1 and G2 particles move, well, they're contradicting their definition. And exist, in my case, very simple, straightforward, objective, physical presence, object that has location. I think it's very straightforward. I don't see what's inconsistent about it. It'd be nice if someone could show me what's inconsistent about them. Okay, and just in case, here's the definition of nothing. Okay. And these definitions are from the dictionaries. One is from the Wiktionary and the other one from dictionary.com. You can see that they don't have any real definition of the word nothing. Not anything. In other words, not a thing. That's essentially what everybody has said for the last 10,000 years. So I had to define nothing as that which doesn't have shape. Now we have a definition. Otherwise, saying that it's not something, all you're doing is using an antonym. And that's not a scientific definition. Okay, because then what is something? Is it not nothing? I mean, you can go on forever in that circle. So we don't have a definition of nothing. That's 90% of the problem today, okay? Okay, so let me get this one out of there. Where is this? Okay, so I think I'm being very consistent with my definitions. So I don't know where he says that I'm self-contradicting, how he concluded that my stuff is self-contradicting. It'd be nice if he would at least give one example. Obviously, if someone's religion is attacked, his virgin is raped, they're going to cry foul, of course. But see, I'm not saying that I'm the oracle of Mother Nature. I'm saying, hey, I've defined some words. I'm going to use them consistently. And if that destroys your religion, well, you got a problem, not me. Okay. Okay. What else has uh, Dave said? Well, he says this. He says, uh, could in theory make you correct. One of the most important things in science is to find where one is wrong. Bill is wrong to say particles and waves don't exist, and therefore all those models are wrong. Well, Dave should take an introductory course in science, especially with Bill Gates, okay? Um, in science, the word wrong is wrong. You never use it. Wrong is an opinion. Right is an opinion. Incorrect, correct is an opinion. True, false, an opinion. Okay, those are all opinions. We don't have opinions in science. That's religion. It's in religion where they have opinions and subjective ideas, etc. So to say wrong, he's saying that he's right. I'm right and you're wrong, Bill. Well, I'm glad that that's your opinion. But that's not science. In science, we don't have right or wrong. We have rational. Science only deals with rational. And so you have to define the criteria for rational. Okay, that's what science is. It's rational explanations. So let's see if we can put that up here to show the difference between what he proposes and what I propose. Okay, um, irrational. What are the criteria? Convert a concept into an object. In other words, known as reification, and begin to move the concept around, treating it as a physical object. And that's what Dave did. See, he says, Bill is wrong to say that particles and waves don't exist. Well, according to my definition, the one that I put objectively there, exist requires an object that has location. Well, waves don't even qualify as objects. Wave is a verb. There is no physical standalone object called wave. You can't take a snapshot of wave because whatever you took a picture of is not waving. It's not a wave yet. All you might have a bunch of particles there, but in order to have a wave, you need to you need to watch a movie. So wave is not a physical object. And yeah, people who've been brainwashed like Dave here in high school or in college to believe that wave is a physical object, they've always treated it as a physical object. And words such as field, they say, well, the wave is made of two fields. Well, field is not an object either. So fields and waves are words that don't belong in physics. Anyone using the word wave is doing religion, especially if they try to move it and say, well, I'm going to move the wave. There is no the wave in physics. And he hasn't learned that. He says, it's wrong to say that particles and waves don't exist. And again, irrational is converting a concept into an object, such as wave turned into an object, reification, and to begin to move it around. So he failed the first criteria of irrationality. Okay? And then, of course, not defining your terms, and Dave doesn't define any terms, okay? And the ones that he defined or his father defined are all bogus because the word object requires another object, okay? The word motion requires change in time, which are already motion. And then he says the objects exist if they move. And so if they don't move, assuming, we have a single object in the universe, does that object exist or not? And they would have to be able to define that, right? They would have to be able to incorporate that within their definition. See, in my case, the definition of exists, it has to have location, and a single object in the universe does not have location. You can only have location if you have distance, and distance has to be between two objects. Anyways, the theory also has to follow from the assumptions. And I don't know how well Dave does there because he's saying that his assumption is that the world is made of particles. I say that's ether, and he's saying that no, that's not ether. So I don't know. His assumptions contradict his definition, whatever definition he has of the ether, right there and then. Okay, so I don't know exactly what he has going through his mind at that point. Okay, but the one that struck me most about all of what Dave commented is this one here, and this essentially puts everything in the proper context. Okay. Oh, wrong one again. Why do I do this? Where is it? Where did I put it now? Let's see if I can get it. Oh, here it is, right at the bottom. Got so many of these sometimes it's hard to. Okay, look at this one. This is the one that really got me going. He says, I have those I considered worth debating already. Someone said, come on, debate with us. And he says, no, he only is going to consider people who agree with him. David says, he went to the Flat Earth Society and he says, guys, do you all believe in the flat Earth? And everybody says, yeah, we all believe in the flat Earth. The Earth is flat. He said, oh, okay, that's good. I'm reinforcing my beliefs. So, he only wants to talk to people who agree to his foundations, to his, his foundations of physics, whatever he's got in his mind. That's interesting. It's a true sense of security, I guess, right? You reinforce your own theories by going people who believe just like you do. Okay, you'll never get into a ring and have a boxing match, I guess. You'll always be on the outside thinking that you've got the truth because you never put your theories to the test, okay? And he says, you and many choose to remain your network of one, which becomes entrained in one's own logic and vocabulary. Okay, it looks like he's talking about himself there a little bit, right? I see this in many people who could, in the end, could truly advance science instead of being a curiosity and being left behind. Oh my God, Dave is doing politics. That's what he's doing. He says, essentially, I've got it there. He says, he's into racking only for the numbers. He wants to get a lot of hits. He wants to get a lot of members. He's out there recruiting. Just like the priests, missionaries, they go out into the jungles or into the Viking land and they convert the Vikings, the heathen. So that's what he's in. He's into a crusade, trying to recruit people to his cause. Okay, what is his cause? Well, his cause is that, like I put it there, the mathematical establishment, they're a union because they all believe in the same thing. They believe in black holes and Big Bang and all this nonsense they've got out there. In case of quantum mechanics, they believe in what is it? The particles of mass called the Higgs. Tachyons travel faster than light, so fast that they travel backwards in time and that kind of thing. Time dilation. They got all this garbage out there, but they all believe in it. So they're a union. And what is Dave? Dave and all these dissidents out there, they form a loose confederation. Okay. And what is the problem with that? Well, I don't know if a good example is the Civil War. I mean, who lost the Civil War? The South. Why did they lose? Well, because you had the North, it was a union, and the South was a confederation. You had Jeff Davis and Alex Stevens, the president and vice president of the South, and they had their capital originally was in Montgomery, Alabama, then they moved it to Richmond. But the point is, they had a capital, they had a central government, but each one of the states was more powerful than the central government. You take the European Union, it's not a union, it's a confederation. Each individual government, like the government here in Germany, is more powerful than the central government in Brussels. It's a confederation. Okay? For questions here in Germany, they're more powerful. Brussels can't tell the German parliament in Berlin what to do within Germany. No, they have some guidelines, and then we do our own thing here, right? So it's different than like the United States, China, Russia. Those are unions. Okay? But Europeans are not a union. Maybe that's why they're probably going to break up in the end. And that's what's going to happen to these guys. These are loose confederations. That's all they are. You have one guy over here, Walt Thornhill. He's got his electric universe guys. They talk about plasma. The other guys are the etherists, the John Chappell group, right? And they talk about ether. And then you have Ken Wheeler. He does his own thing there with concepts, moves concepts from left to right. And so all these groups, they're not talking to each other. What do they have in common? They have in common that they oppose the establishment. Okay? I oppose the establishment too. Not because of that am I going to be friends with these guys, because I attack them just as viciously as I attack the establishment. I think they're just as loony. Because why? They deal with particles and they deal with waves. And we haven't been able to explain any physical mechanism in the last 10,000 years with particles or with waves. And waves are not even objects. And if particles are not real, for sure they're not physical objects for the purposes of physics. So no, these confederations have no future. And all these people did was essentially, they carved a niche in the dissident market. That's all they did. And that's where they stand today. They're in the process of recruiting people because they think that's what they're supposed to do. That's how they're going to challenge the establishment. And I don't think they have a chance. Why? Because the establishment is a union. And you can break up the union perhaps by showing what's wrong with the union. If you give them an alternative, you say, look, they say black, we say white. Well, when you go to these guys, they're talking about particles. And the establishment says, we've dealt with particles already. We couldn't fix it. So we invented fake particles, the vibrating fields and energy and virtual particles that come in from the void and all these magical, spiritual things. And these people, they come up with particles. They say, yeah, look, we can explain this with particles. We've already been through that. And they can't explain it with particles. They have push gravity. What nonsense is that? We know push gravity is idiocy, total idiocy. Anyone proposing particles today in this day and age, well, I don't know. Needs to go to a psychiatrist. That's what he needs to do. We cannot explain any phenomenon. You cannot explain this with particles. And these two magnets will work out there in outer space. Okay? Out there in outer space, they will attract just as they do here on Earth. If this is in the middle of space, it would also work. In fact, this would work even if there were no other objects in the entire universe, because the magnetic field originates in the magnets. Not like the Hilsters say that it's being pushed from the outside. You can already feel the pull here. It's pulling against my finger, and they're saying it's being pushed from the outside. Total lunacy. Total lunacy. So when they come up with particles, the establishment laughs at them and says, we've already done particles. We can't explain it. And, all these people from Niels Bohr and so on, they try to explain things with particles. And they finally had to abandon the corpuscle, the classical particle. And they invented their own fake particle, bundle of energy and vibrating fields or excited fields. That's how they get around these problems, because they're saying, look, there is no such thing as a real particle. And these people want to reinvent the wheel. They say, no, look, we're going to bring Newton's particles back again. And they can't explain it. They have to come up with all these idiotic mechanisms. In fact, I have a little GIF here that I showed last time of how these people have come up with all these different mechanisms for pull. And you can see how ridiculous theirs is. We have the quantum, which is negative momentum transfer. You have relativity, warp space, and the two guys slide towards each other or roll towards each other. We have the de Hilster, which is really a Casimir effect, which is pushed from the outside, pressure when you remove whatever's between them, whatever's keeping them apart. Okay? And then you have William of Ockham. He's really got it right. He says, look, you got to choose the simplest, more rational way of pulling on the donkey, and that's just use a rope. Okay? That's how you pull on something. And see, what these people don't have in their particle universe, all of them, it doesn't matter who, right? What all these people don't have is accountability for pull. See, here on Earth, you can throw a ball and you're pushing, okay? You can push on a box. You can, we all understand push. It's just surface to surface, and there's someone winning the tug of war, right? So this guy pushes, and the other thing gives way. We call that push. But we also understand that there's another type of force known as pull. Okay, and how do you pull? Well, always, if you're going to do pull, you got to do it through an elongated mediator. There's no other way. Okay, you're going to pull, you better have something that connects you to the other side, right? To the other side of the stream, of the bank, right? And you got that's how you do pull. Okay, But these people are saying that Mother Nature never discovered the force of pull. Mother Nature does everything with push because she only has particles. And so poor Mother Nature, she never discovered the force of pull. If instead you make a different assumption, you say all particles, all atoms in the universe are connected, are physically interconnected, but we cannot see the mediator, okay? Then now you can explain action at a distance, you can explain pull, and now you've introduced the force of pull for the first time in history into um, into physics. And of course, people say, well, how come they don't tangle and this kind of thing? That's a long story. Won't get into that right now. But the point is that hopefully Mother Nature knows how to do pull, and she doesn't do it with push. Anyways, the point here is that I think Dave D. Hilster's criticism of my criticism is unfounded. He hasn't justified any of his points, and not only that, he hasn't showed where I'm inconsistent. I showed that I'm objectively consistent in my definitions. I apply my definitions to his theory strictly. He may not agree with my definitions. Well, then he's got to fight for his definitions, and I hope his book is full of definitions in the first page, just like mine is. Starts out with definitions. His book should start with definitions. And he better define the ether, and I better not find a word, the definition is a bunch of particles in any way, shape, or form, because I'm going to rub it in his nose, okay? The other issue is, that, first I'm being consistent, and second, I think, he doesn't have a definition of ether. He wants to move directly into what the ether does, and he can't get away with that. He's got to define the ether. Okay, he's always in physics. We must define the terms that are going to make or break our theory, and here the key word is ether. So you better define first what the word ether means, and then you move into model and theory and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I'm saying that not only is his accusation that I'm inconsistent, unjustified. He didn't substantiate it, and then I think I represented their model just like they described it in their own writings and their own videos. So I don't know in what way I, misrepresented their model. Since they won't say it, I have to continue in saying that I represented it correctly. When they show what I misrepresented, then maybe I'll learn something, But meanwhile, it's up to you guys, all you folks out there, you do your own thinking. And maybe there's something I didn't catch, maybe there's something I missed, and you can point it out to me and say, Bill, you missed this. See, this is what they're saying. And you missed it completely. Okay, then I'll see what 90% I missed of their theories. Okay. Until then, I have to say that I represented their model faithfully. Okay. I put it in motion. And if they don't like it, well, now they have more material that they can revise for their own book. So they should even take that as a constructive criticism. With that, I'll see you next time, hopefully on Wednesday. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.